thank you, Reds, for everyone at Reds for the opportunity to discuss who is responsible for the atmosphere in the room. This is a very personalized and insight, and I'm going to explore this question by the way of Breccia, which is a Global Challenges research funded project. And Breccia is focusing on food and water security, largely in Kenya, Ghana and Malawi. And we're about 70 people in the team. And one of the key research vehicles has been that everyone has been expected to lead a small research project. And so for our ECRs, that means that they've had a mini PI experience. And so thinking about their training and development, I was looking for some resources around leadership and had a conversation with a really good friend of mine, Sarah Hamadoudan, and she said, oh, you've got to see Jürgen Klopp's video, Lessons in Leadership. Well, I'm not really a football fan and didn't really know, so I apologise to anybody who's a Liverpool fan. So I didn't really know much about Jürgen Klopp, but I watched the video, and if you've seen it, it's a very rich little video to deconstruct. But there was something that really leapt out at me in this video, and he says this a couple of times, and he's talking about relationships at Liverpool, and he says, always when you enter a room, you have a little bit of responsibility for the mood in that room. And then a little bit later on, he says, everyone is responsible for the atmosphere in the room. And that really resonated with me because it reminded me of Brian Street's idea of culture, and culture is a verb, something that we do. And in Street's definition, culture is an active process of meaning making and contest over definition, including its own definition. And I have seen the phrase meaning making more recently associated with culture. But in Street's definition, this is an active process, both of meaning making and also contest and contestation. So it's going to mean different things to different people at different times. And there's no single experience, and it's not a smooth process. So it's ongoing. So people who kind of talk about how, we're going to fix the culture and move on. It's not how it works in Street's definition. We're all involved in this, and this is a very ongoing process. And of course, if we're all contributing to the atmosphere in the room, I need to point out that that's not an equal contribution. So some people and some parts of the organisation have more powerful and dominant voices. But I do want to suggest that as researcher developers, we have a significant voice in that room, and we have a part to play in that. So what does culture consist of? I think, social anthropologists and Royal Society talk about it as values, norms, expectation, language, symbols, a bit like the little logo at the top of my presentation here, which the Breccia team designed, attitudes, behaviours and habits. And we know that we're not going to get culture change unless we change behaviour. And for me, a lot of the poor behaviour in universities is habitual practice. And as researcher developers, we can help create new habits. So the question, can we think of the institutional space as a site for processes of meaning making and disruption? My answer is emphatically yes, we can. And the great thing about Breccia was that it gave me an opportunity to try and create an inclusive and respectful research culture, not just because GCRF demands it, but because I really chose and wanted to work with a team that wanted to create that. And so from the outset, I needed to establish that we were taking a whole team approach, that it was our team. And for me as a research developer, that was really important, that there wasn't an attitude in the team of you can go and do the research and development training over here and we'll do the proper science over here. For me, it's our team. So although I've designed the training over the lifetime of the project, it has been co-designed with the PI and the co-Is and the researchers. But more crucially, I've got everyone involved in the delivery, including the professional services staff in the team. So everyone has expertise. If you're a master's or a professor, you're involved in the process of the content design and delivery at some point. So the team owns its own professional development. And a lot of that comes, I think, from me asking kind of smart questions. but also using the existing structure of the research process, those research meetings, not just to talk about methods and how the project's going, but also to talk about individual and team effectiveness and getting all those cultural values and behaviors and questions in by stealth, if you like. So creating this environment for meaning making, for me, it's really important. And so all of the questions that are there in bold and in italics are all questions that at some point we have discussed as a team. And so initially in section meeting, we would all, most research projects would talk about how do we work together. But a year or so later, we discussed what is our philosophy, what does Breccia stand for? And then following on from that, more recently, we've talked about what kind of language do we use? And particularly for a project involved in sub-Saharan Africa, that was really an important discussion. So I also think it's healthy for the PI and team members to hear other people's views. And, and I gave this talk a little while ago to the Researchers 14 group, and I'd said, oh, my role is just to, nudge, present opportunities, ask awkward and challenging questions. But there were a couple of questions that came up in the course of that discussion, which I've subsequently reflected on and have, part two, if you like, made me think about what I really am doing. And I'm borrowing a phrase here from Alison Mitchell, who was at Vitae, and I heard her once talking about using the power of our expertise. And as a profession, that's what I want us, if there's a takeaway, it's about thinking about the power of our expertise here. And so I realized that actually, I have a lot of experience, and I've been doing this for, I hate to say how many years I've been doing research and development, but accumulated a lot of knowledge. And, and so I'm choosing my moments to ask smart questions or to arm other people in the team, the PI, the project manager, researchers, with questions and content that they can go and deliver themselves. So it's not resource intensive in that sense. And I recognize that from the outset, I challenged and questioned what the project stood for and what the PI wanted to achieve and what the team wanted to achieve. And my confidence comes from Albert Bandura's notion of extended agency. And anybody who's familiar with or not familiar with his theory of social cognitive theory, you know that I'm just about to misuse it. And so what Bandura says is that to get through the day, there are three different types of agency. First, individual agency, the things that I can do by myself, so clean my own teeth. Second, proxy agency, the things that I can achieve only through other people, like servicing the car. And then thirdly, collective agency. And collective agency says we're all in it together, and that's what Breccia is for me. And I realize that this is part of my terms and conditions, and that I'm in a very privileged position because I have experience and knowledge and professional expertise, I guess, and also the confidence, and also the fact that I'm a stocky middle-aged menopausal woman, so I don't give a stuff. But what I have decided is that I'm not supporting attitudes from PIs that see researchers as a proxy instrument to, say, further their own egos. And I'm certainly not going to support academic imperialism, right? But as I say, I'm in a privileged position to take that stance. But I think that all researchers, developers have an active and powerful voice in this process of meaning making in our own institutions. And that I think we need to think about how we use that, because if we don't use our voice, then we are colluding to some extent with the prevailing atmosphere in the room. So back to Jürgen Klopp, we all have a little bit of responsibility for how that works. And I think it's a little bit stronger than that. I'm going to suggest that as researcher developers, we have a moral imperative to act as a profession. And we have done this in the past. We come from a disruptive professional heritage. So anyone who remembers the early days of Roberts, and here's the Gareth Roberts, will know that certainly around doctoral supervision, there was a lot of hostility. We weren't exactly greeted with open arms. That there was some resistance to us taking their doctoral researchers, or any researcher for that fact, away to do the training. But that's been a real cultural change since 2004-05. I don't think we find many doctoral supervisors who would object to us as a profession, training the researchers. So I think our professional heritage is one of practicing disruption. We are a disruptive voice in the room. And as I say, I think I come from a privileged position, and not everyone is in the same position as me. But there are some things that I think we can do, and I think some of the things that Karen has just highlighted as well. So I think we can design and commission with intent. We can think about the language we use. And when I do doctoral supervision, I deliberately talk about supervisors engendering doctoral delight and joyfulness. And I know that they are awkward terms, but I do use them deliberately to try and jar and to shift people's thinking. So we can use appreciative and inclusive language. And I think we can deliberately encourage new habits and socialize ideas. And coming back to the keynote this morning, definitely formalizes with like-minded colleagues. So there's some resources there, and thank you very much.